But I'm going to speak directly to college graduates right now. If you are poo-pooing AI just because you're afraid it's going to take your starter job, you are making a big mistake. But before we get into that,
we should probably do a proper intro, huh?
Yes.
So welcome to the Money Alchemist Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Gargano.
And I'm co-host Ben Jones.
And just to back up a second from the rabbit hole that we were down. So last week, you were not here, Ben. So hope you enjoyed your vacation.
I was basking in the sunshine of Florida. Yeah, the Florida Panhandle in a quiet little nook that I will not disclose where it is because I don't want anybody else there.
Yeah, because all of our listeners are just going to flood the Florida
pining
beaches.
to go. Yeah, but it's such a really cool, it's like this, it's this cape, and it's got everything you need on the cape. Of course, everything's 10x more expensive on the Cape, but at least you don't have to go anywhere. It's got this like ice cream shop. It's got all these restaurants. There are no high rises, which is really nice. So they got all these like bungalows and these homes on stilts. So yeah, it's a great place to take a family. Very quiet, and we enjoy a week there. But I have a hard time. I don't know if you can relate to this, man, but when I go on vacation, it's like 3 days. I cannot let my guard down. I'm still checking in my emails. I'm looking at my voicemails. I'm looking at my text messages. I'm attending meetings even.
Sure.
And about the third day, that's when I'm like, okay, I guess everything's under control. So I have a really hard time relaxing on the vacation. I really only get like a couple days.
You never really had the privilege of being a W-2 employee.
I did, but it's been a long time. Back when I was a W-2 employee, I didn't make enough money to really afford vacations.
Yeah.
So, I definitely went on vacations, but I can't recall what they were like.
My guess is when you did go on them, you probably could check out a little bit easier.
Yes, definitely. Because you could delegate your work. Your work would just be handled by other people. When you're, there's a lot of mission critical things that I have my hands in. And granted, there's other people that I can depend on, rely on that can handle those things. But I kind of feel guilty doing that, because it's kind of high stress, high level stuff. And anyway, I don't need to go on to that. It's good to be back. I heard you had a great episode with Bryan. I still need to go and listen to it, but it was about marketing. And, give us a quick recap.
Yeah. So Brian Buechner, one of my fraternity brothers from back in college, actually, and he grew up to become a PhD studying consumer psychology.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I forget, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but it's that one of the keys to marketing is actually less about trying to convince you to buy something you don't need, but really more about trying to eliminate excessive amounts of choice.
Yes.
Like you and I talked about in financial planning, how if you give a client maybe too much information or you overload them with too many choices, it leads them to be, it just makes it hard for them. They get analysis paralysis.
That's right, yeah.
And so he was really talking about how in marketing and when we think about consumer behavior, a really big part of the key is about eliminating a lot of the choices so that you can get to a decision faster.
That's exactly why there are default investment options in 401ks, and they've trimmed down the investment menu to like 14, 15 choices, is because what they found when they built these 401k plans is if they built them to have unlimited choice, people would not enroll in them.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't...
They get to the menu and they wouldn't know what to choose, so they just log out and give up.
Yeah. Or they would say, I'll do a deep analysis later and look at it later, and then later would never come.
Yeah.
So, now when you enroll, there's auto enrollment. They just go ahead and sign you up, and then they put you in the default option, which is what most people, like 80% of them stick with.
Because it turns out the easiest, like the most effective pathway to wealth is just to invest early and often and stay invested.
So here's a question. Do we need marketing as consumers? Do we need marketing in order to make choices for ourselves?
I think that we probably over-appreciate our need for choice.
Yeah.
Like for me, it sounds great to have 1,000 choices and have all of the control in my pocket, but like I have 1,000 choices on Netflix as far as what to watch, and I can't choose any of them.
Yeah.
And you know what I end up doing? I end up going to like the top 10. No, I go to like the top 10.
Oh, you do go to the top? Yeah.
Because you know what it does? It knows what I like to watch. It knows what it's seen me watch. And so it says, hey, we think you'll like these things.
You know why I also watch the top 10? It's because I know everybody else is watching the top 10 and I want to be relevant.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm not. This isn't the top 10. This is like the things Netflix picks out for me. So like they have an algorithm behind the scenes in Netflix. I mean, I say algorithm. Maybe that's an overused term now. Now it's just like AI probably. But the point is it knows what I watch, where I spend time, what I get off of, what I say I like, etc. And then it's like, hey, based on what we think about you, here's what you might want to look at. And like, it's pretty good. You and I are probably a little different on this opinion in the sense that like, I think you're pretty offended at the idea of companies selling your data. Right? Like if you don't have a Facebook. And
I think it's uncomfortable. Yes. Yeah. I don't like the idea. Anyway, I don't want to derail your thought.
Well, I know that you're uncomfortable with it. And for me, I maybe have a slightly different approach. There's part of me that says like it's a little invasive or whatever, but there's another part of me that says I really like that it kind of knows what I'm looking for and it puts it right in front of me and it helps me get to a choice. So when I'm shopping for XYZ thing. I mean, it's almost spooky in the sense that I don't even have to put it in my phone for it to know. I can like talk about it. Like you and I could talk about something right now and I'll show up on my phone later and it'll shove me an ad for whatever I'm talking about. And there's a part of me that, like you said, it's a little uncomfortable, but there's also a part of me that appreciates that because it helps me cut through a lot of junk to get to what I want.
Yes. Yeah. But are you afraid, this is me, that you're going to get marketed something that's inferior? One thing that I like to do, and I've structured my consumerist behaviors are all around this, and that is every major product I like to buy. When I would classify anything as a major product as like anything that costs over $500. If it costs over $500, I'm gonna put a lot of research into it, independent of all marketing. So I'm gonna break out the Claude and the Grok and the Gemini. I'm gonna bring up consumer reports. I'm gonna read reviews. I'm gonna do like a pretty thorough investigation. And it's really inconvenient to do that. Whereas I feel like if you are feeding an algo your all your information, it's just going to say, oh, I know you need this at this time, and it's going to make it super convenient for you to buy it. And then you're going to end up ripping yourself off because all you're doing is you're giving the company that purchased that marketing data from Amazon or from YouTube or whatever for the most money. So you're going to end up buying the product that has the most marketing spread on it.
This is where I think AI is going to be awesome.
Well, maybe. What do you have to say about that?
Well, and Bryan and I talked about this on the podcast last time, but I think there's a lot of value. Like, just think about our industry. There's so many scammy financial advisors out there, looking to sell people something they don't need. And I just think, like, for the average consumer, and I've said this for a long time now, is like having some financial knowledge doesn't mean that you don't need an advisor. It means that you have enough wherewithal to hire a good advisor.
Yes.
I think that's really important because somebody that doesn't understand financial planning doesn't have any kind of baseline to assess, is this person good or not? And I think AI is going to help levelize that to some extent. And your criticism, which is probably fair, is that some of that is like crowdsourced. So it's like whatever the world kind of agrees on is good, but that's probably fairly protected, like, as opposed to just hoping. And so I think that AI, kind of back to your point, and I have a really good example of this. I recently put a sauna in my house, and saunas are kind of a little snake oily right now. So as soon as Facebook figured out that I was looking at saunas, I'm getting like all these ads for like why a full spectrum sauna is better than a somewhat, not full spectrum, and then why a traditional sauna is worse than a spectrum, and blah, 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 blah. I kind of ended up having a conversation with AI and using that to help me get to, like, I trusted the AI more than I trusted the advertising. And I feel like it helped me cut through a lot of the noise to really prioritize what mattered to me in the build. And I've been really happy with it. I mean, it was really kind of a collaboration to get there. But to Bryan's point, and over time, the AI is going to have likely some role in marketing to me. right?
You think?
But this is where Brian's point came from. It's not that it's going to manipulate me into buying something that I shouldn't be buying. What it's going to do is, it's back to our core point, it's going to help me narrow down choices. So like, let's say I'm talking about a sauna to it. It might say, here are what you want to consider. And then, oh, by the way, here are 3 examples of saunas you could buy if you want something like this. And it's just going to give me a little subset of choice down at the bottom to make it easier for me to click that.
Here's where I'll say I will trust AI to help me make my buying decisions solely. So right now I use my own logic and I layer it on top of AI. AI is just,
well, of course, you can't trust it blindly.
Yeah. I will, as soon as I go in and I say I want this product, and then of the menu of options it gives me, one of them is from like Goodwill. It's like, hey, you ought to go to an antique store and buy this. So, not saying that's the case. It should be the case every time, but sometimes you go and look for a new product, and you really don't. What you need is not a new product. What you need is something that's already been invented and somebody's used. So when it throws like an item into the mix that's not a brand new item that obviously doesn't have like marketing spend behind it, then I'll trust it more. But I don't see that. So I still think...
Well, so far it doesn't throw me specific items at all. It just talks me through things. I just think...
Oh, it does. For me, I've used it. Like I did it. I just changed brake pads in my car, and it gave me like 3 or 4 different brands of brake pads.
Well, did you ask for it though? It didn't proactively give you the brands.
No, I asked for it.
Yeah, you got to ask for it. I think at some point in the future, there's all this talk, and this is interesting because we're going to talk about... Well, let's get to the news here really quick. Let's kind of get on task here. So
yeah, we got way off task, but that's okay. It's an exciting topic. I'm glad you recapped the episode. Like I said, I haven't listened to it yet, but I intend on it. So looked forward to having Bryan back at some point. So let me go ahead and launch right into the news stories.
This should be news to no one at this point.
Yeah,
effectively.
Well, I don't know about that, man. There's a lot of people that they rely on us. They rely on us, Brent, for their entire news feed.
Well, if I'm the first one telling you that we're now hopeful of the end of the Iran war.
We may not break the news to you, but we make sure you know how it impacts you financially. So we'll put it that way. So we add a layer of relevance on top of the news. But the first thing on our list since last time we were sitting down together is that apparently now we've got peace in the Middle East. So there is a memorandum of understanding. One thing I want to say about this is there are a lot of tweets I'm reading and news stories saying, oh, this is victory for Iran and this is victory for the United States. Oddly, it seems the opinion tracks with political affiliations. That's interesting. I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Sarcasm, but I will say right now nobody knows anything about this memorandum of understanding. It is not in writing anywhere. One thing that is crystal clear about this is that Iran attaining nuclear weapons in any period of time is just not on the table. So there is a formal signing of the Memorandum of Understanding, which is not a peace agreement. It's not a treaty. It's not a surrender. It's just like, hey, we agree that we're going to eventually agree. That's literally what this is. Sure. like step in the right direction, sure. But it is not anything locked in stone. So one thing that is associated with this that is meaningful is that apparently the Strait of Hormuz is open, whatever that means. And what that really means is the blockade is over and, Iran is... I kind of argue that Iran was never the entity that was disallowing ships to use the Strait of Hormuz. I think that was kind of a red herring, but that's just my conspiratorial hat being put on here. But, the Strait of Hormuz is open and just in time for the July travel day. And would you know it, the price of oil is cratering. So, let me get back to that screen. Here we are.
Trump does such an interesting job of giving the market hope, letting it bid the market up, and then letting it down just a little bit, and then reigniting that same hope. And the market finds a way to go down less than it went up. So we kind of make our way to a high and inevitably kind of climb this wall of worry that we always talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it almost seems by design. So, there are these algo trading systems out there. What did you call them? CTOs or
CTAs?
CTAs. What's that an acronym for? It's a
it's
computerized trading algorithm.
it's essentially hedge funds.
It must be computerized trading algorithm. That's my guess. These things are trading on news. And if you know kind of how they work and you can make the news, which the president of the United States obviously can, then why not use that to your advantage? And the term is taco. Trump always chickens out, and we get some hyperbolic threat like we're going to wipe him off of the face of the earth, and then the markets react to that, and then sure enough, the chickening out occurs. We ratchet to new all-time highs. The threat repeats. We're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. There will be some new version of that, and then the market craters. It's like a ratchet effect. And it continues to climb to new all-time highs.
Well, and the market, we've said this so many times before, but markets tend to bottom when uncertainty peaks.
Yeah.
And for this year, the market bottomed, I think, March 31st. And at that point, we had this war raging in Iran. Oil prices were skyrocketing. Inflation's going higher. We don't know what's going to happen with the Fed chair. I mean, it felt really loud at the time. And it just seems like as much as things aren't fully resolved now, we're starting to quiet down.
Yeah.
And that's been really positive. I mean, we had, and everybody seems to be frustrated right now about how well the stock market has figured out how to
they're angry.
It's mildly infuriating.
We're gonna get angry comments on this video.
Yeah. But earnings,
Yeah.
we had a blowout Q1 earnings season. And whether it was concentrated or not, we got some comments about how concentrated it was, what have you, whatever. The fact is, S&P earnings are rising faster than they have in years, right? And so you have kind of this fear of missing out around these earnings rising, and now you have maybe some of these what people would have assumed. It's so easy when you're in the middle of all of the war and everything else to kind of pretend what the outcome is based on what's currently happening. A plus B equals C, but it turns out that the future doesn't really work that way. And so it's just, if you were building your investment thesis on assumptions that you were making a month and a half ago about what's going on in the stock market, you're probably wrong today. Is my guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and in fact, in June 2nd, we reached a new all-time high. I wonder if we surpassed that today.
Well, it depends. The Dow is at all-time highs right now. Tech stocks sold off a little bit more.
This is TSX Composite. I don't know what I'm looking at here. Let me. Anyway, I have it on my notes here. On June 2nd, the Dow did hit, or not the Dow, the S&P 500 hit a new all-time high of 7,609. That's one of 23 new all-time highs achieved so far in 2026. The 30-year average per year of all-time highs that we hit in that index is 15 to 20. So we're already surpassing the average, and that implies that this is a banger year in the stock market.
Even though we've already had a 10% drawdown.
Yep. Even we've had
Right.
it. And by the way, a 10% drawdown is normal. Perfectly normal. So people were panicking. I think the reason everybody was panicking is because the Iran war was happening. And do we call it a war? It should be a conflict, right? There was no declaration of war, so I guess you just call it an Iran conflict. But anyway, we had the Iran operation happening, and then we also have, and it still happens today, and I largely blame these CEOs of AI companies, these hyperscalers, this AI doomerism that jobs are going to be eliminated. Are you watching the graduations going on at Stanford? There was this big walkout because the Google CEO, I guess, was the keynote speaker, wasn't even going to talk about AI, and then all the students just walked out. There was multiple videos all over the internet of these college graduates booing anytime that their AI is mentioned. I'm going to speak directly to college graduates right now. If you are poo-pooing AI just because you're afraid it's going to take your starter job, you are making a big mistake. As someone who hires someone, I'm way more likely to hire someone that knows how to use Claude better than me than someone who says, I hate Claude. What a stupid thing to do. You're not protesting AI is not going to make it go away. Right. I mean, we got trillions of dollars in this industry now. It's going to get bigger. So turning your back on that is a mistake. So that's just a word from an old Zoomer, or what am I, millennial? But anyway,
an elder millennial.
Yeah. Speaking of AI, I do want to talk about Anthropic news. I don't know if you're following this, but
real quick before you do, I want to make 2 points on what's going on in the market this year. Okay, because I want to give people a little bit of hope. I think it always sounds smarter to be a pessimist. Optimists sound kind of dumb, and I'm okay with that. I am an optimist. But here's two facts that might get you thinking a bit. One, although we just talked about the market being at all-time highs, although you might think, oh, the market's at all-time highs, it might be a great time to sell.
Yeah.
And maybe it is if you need the money or whatever. But if you look historically over if you were to buy the market on any given day as opposed to at all-time highs, it turns out that you actually do better on a 1, 3, and 5 year basis buying at highs. So it turns out that markets that hit new highs tend to hit new highs. So it's not a bad time to invest, one. The second stat that I thought people would be interested in here is that the market bottomed in the end of March 31st, and April and May were very, very strong, like 10% months in the S&P. Yeah. As of this recording, the S&P is up like 11% year to date after being down on the year just a couple months ago. So in the other instances where that would happen since 1950, so there's 1, 2, 3, 5 other instances where that has happened since 1950. Hold on. Sorry, 4 other instances, with the 5th being this past year. We'll see. But in the other 4 instances, 100% of the time, the market was higher by the end of the year.
Never not once. Always.
Never not once. Yeah. Always. Now it's 4 times. I mean, it's not like, a huge sample, but in the other 4 instances, the market was always up between May and the end of the year, the end of May and the end of the year, and the average return over the rest of the year was plus 19%.
Yeah.
So just because we just had 2 blowout months does not mean it's time to jump out.
Well, I don't find this surprising at all, because the whole reason you invest is to reach all-time highs. Like, nobody's investing to lose money. So if you weren't reaching all-time highs consistently, then that would be a reason not to invest.
Sure, but I think the interesting stat is that it actually turns out that all-time highs aren't a sell signal. They're actually a buy signal.
Yeah. Well, I can. It seems counterintuitive. I get that. So on to Anthropic. By the way, Anthropic's the new hotness. Nobody cares about OpenAI anymore. We talked about this briefly before the show. So, how Anthropic started is really interesting, where there was this big kerfuffle. You could call it a coup, where the board, which at the time included Anthropic's current CEO, Dario Armodi, voted Sam Altman out as CEO. And it was all pertaining to the way Sam Altman conducted himself and this conversion from a nonprofit to a for-profit. And it was viewed as being somewhat greedy. Ironically, Anthropic does the same thing. So they go, the so-called altruistic members of the OpenAI board go and start Anthropic, and then they go and do the same thing Sam Altman did. So the irony there is not lost on me. But what happened was Anthropic came out with their new model called Fable 5. So Fable 5 is a dumbed down version of their institutional grade Mythos 5. That's kind of what the U.S. military uses, and certain financial institutions, you have to have a special security license in order to get access to this thing. But Fable 5 has the same framework, the same type of uses, I would guess, but it's just it's not ungoverned. So there's governors that control it. So apparently Amazon was running a bunch of tests on Fable 5 and found that you could actually jailbreak it. So you could make it act like Mythos 5 and use it to find cybersecurity vulnerabilities amongst some other malicious use cases. So there was this big kerfuffle where the CEO of Amazon basically blew the whistle, calling Scott Bessent, tattling on Anthropic. So, Andy Jassy, made a phone call to Scott Bessent saying, Anthropic's, is this big risk, and we can't have it on the market like this. And then Scott Bessent, of course, gets Howard Lutnick involved, and then Trump gets involved, and they all try to make a phone call to Dario, and they find out the guy's on a wellness retreat, just like in that high tech movie. I forget what movie it was on Netflix, where this guy was on a wellness retreat, and all hell was breaking loose in his company. But apparently this same thing happened. Of course, Anthropic denied that, he's not on a wellness retreat, which is like, why? Who cares? Nobody cares if he was or wasn't.
Can't control when those things happen.
I know. So apparently, what the U.S. government did, they had this like back and forth, and Anthropic said, no, it's not jailbroken, and the U.S. says, well, Jassy says it is. It was just a bunch of finger pointing. So finally, Howard Lutnick says, okay, well, we're slapping export controls on this. You can't ship Mythos 5 to any international person or entity, including your own employees. And Anthropic was like, well, we can't do that. And they're like, too bad. So they disabled it. So now if you log on to your Claude, if you're on the Pro or a higher tier version of Claude, it says Fable 5 is currently disabled, and that's why is because the U.S. government stepped in. So that's actually big news, because what this means is that any advancement now is going to come under the scrutiny of regulators in the U.S. government, and it could potentially be disruptive, especially if like you're one of these companies on the cutting edge and you develop a lot of systems around these newer models. Like you're just going to use some of the Chinese open source models and just control those from soup to nuts. So there's a lot of folks out there saying this is the beginning of the bubble pop. Where the U.S. AI bubble is bound to burst, because we've got it. We're adopting this strategy, this consolidated strategy, where we basically got like 3 or 4 major AI software companies. So you got Anthropic, you got Google with its Gemini product, you got X with Grok. And then you have OpenAI, of course, the behemoth. They're the old dog, the one that started it all.
Old dog.
So whereas in China, you've got all these like small shops. You remember the DeepSeek thing that came out and caused all sorts of waves.
That was kind of the beginning of the sell-off last year.
Well, now, and now, this is what causes because the DeepSeek scare was like, oh, here's a company that's doing it for super cheap, and of course that kind of came and went. But they're one of the top video AI products out there is actually not any of the U.S. It's who owns TikTok? I forget the name of the company. ByteDance. Yeah, it's called something. It's something related to ByteDance that they created.
Well, but that's the fundamental question I think that we in the U.S. have to try to figure out, is we're in like this arms race with China over who gets this AI, and on who gets this AI, who can create a better AI product, and ultimately you're kind of facing this battle of, if we don't regulate it, you could potentially destroy civilization.
Well, at first it was the race to artificial general intelligence.
Okay.
That was kind of like the goalpost, and there's been a lot of arguments like, hey, we've kind of achieved that. The Fable 5 model that Anthropic came out with can actually beat an entire Pokemon game just by reading a screen, the same as a human. Like, that's pretty general intelligence use there. Like, not to not be trained on this game at all, just like, hey, here's the game, and it figures it out.
Sure.
That takes, I think, some general intelligence. But now what it is, now the goalpost is super intelligence. So something that supersedes and is more intelligent than the smartest collection of human beings out there. So that kind of is what everybody's afraid of right now.
But I guess my point around there's this school of thought that less regulation is a good thing, because you're going to get there faster in this ever important arms race that we have with China. On the other hand, you have the idea that, well, without regulation, AI may just go off the rails and end humanity, and so we need to regulate it. And I think those two things we just really haven't come to grips with what the true policy is here on that here in the U.S.
Well, we're going to figure it out dynamically. So, and our next news story, I'm just going to cut right into it. It ties in a little bit with high technology. It actually also ties in with our main topic for today, and that is the SpaceX IPO. Man, I've been getting calls about this IPO for over a year. I have never in my career, I've been doing this for 20 years. Never in my career have I ever had a call for an IPO more than 6 months in advance.
Yeah.
So this broke all sorts of records. The size of it, which I'm going to bring an image up on the screen if I can find out.
Yeah, I think what's really different here about this IPO versus a lot of others that we've seen in the past is this. When we say this IPO was massive, what we don't mean is that the IPO was like really exciting for a lot of people and everybody knew about it. What we do mean is that this company literally went public at almost a $2 trillion valuation. Like, the way that investing works is that you buy a company when it is small.
Yes.
And small in public terms is like maybe tens of billions of dollars or something, right? You buy a company for $10 billion and you buy your little 1% stake or whatever you buy in the company. And then if the company goes to $1 trillion, that's 100x, assuming no dilution on a 10 billion. That's a big return. To make 100x on an investment that's worth $2 trillion, like the company is worth $2 trillion, the company has to go to $200 trillion.
We're talking Zimbabwe inflation at this point, like ridiculous numbers.
It's just like, I think what's hard here is that a lot of people were really excited about, quote, getting in on the ground floor or something with the IPO. This was not the ground floor. I mean, this company is literally 10 years ago was valued between 10 and $20 billion. Mm-hmm. And today it's valued over $2 trillion. That is 100 to 200x. That means if you put $10,000 in SpaceX 10 years ago at that valuation, and for easy math, we're going to pretend there's no dilution or anything like that, your $10,000 would be worth between $1 million and $2 million today.
Yes.
Right? So, and by the way, there's lots of people, SpaceX employees, people that got into the private funds, things like that own this thing from those levels. Mm-hmm. And by the way, they can't sell right now.
No, they can't. So there's a couple special things about that are unprecedented about this IPO. One is the size. It's just for scale. The largest IPO to have occurred historically prior to the SpaceX IPO was the Saudi Aramco. At $29.4 billion. SpaceX was almost 3x that. Actually, it was. I think.
Interesting distinction. Yeah. That doesn't mean, like, SpaceX raised $75 billion. The company's value is $2 trillion. What they effectively did is they said, we're going to sell a portion of our company to the public in exchange for money that we can use to expand our initiatives. And they managed to put, actually, after all the numbers are settled out, it's something like $86 billion that they've effectively put in the bank.
Yeah, well, they had what's called a green shoe provision. So a green shoe provision is when an IPO, and by the way, it's after this company called
the Green Shoe Company?
Green Shoe Manufacturing Company, and it's since it's a company that's still around today, but in the 60s, they were the first IPO to put this provision in the deal arrangement, where if a issue is highly subscribed, they have the ability to issue an additional 15% shares, and that's exactly what happened here. So, the original plan was to have 75 billion. It was like 555 million stock. I think it was 500 million shares at $135 a share. And then the extra 55 million came from this green shoe provision. Don't quote me from that, but I think that's how it maths out. But all that money was considered a primary offering, which means that existing shareholders did not sell their shares. In fact, a lot of the original shareholders are still locked up.
Right, they just diluted people.
Yeah, Elon Musk's own shares, he cannot sell for 366 days. But they sold all that money that was raised went directly to SpaceX. So none of it went to any of the employees. It all went to...
Well, it went to the employees in terms of their share values.
Well, correct, because the share values exploded.
Yeah. If you're an employee of SpaceX right now and you have restricted stock or options or anything that's been doled out to you, you're pretty happy about it. A lot of this return came pretty recently. Like the stock the company in the private market's valuation did not increase 100-fold. A lot of this return came in the last 6 months to a year.
Yeah, well, I just put SpaceX share price on the screen. It's just been nothing but green screens. But speaking of the...
But I hear that 96% of this stock is locked up right now between employees, owners, but like all of the shares of SpaceX, only 4% of them right now are actually tradable.
That makes sense to me when you consider all the founding owners. I know 30% went to retail, but of that 30%, that was only 30% of the new issue.
Right.
So I think that it's really an American just glory story. The whole story of SpaceX, it goes all the way back to, I think, 2002. So Elon Musk, he wasn't a nobody, but he definitely wasn't a household name. If you threw out the name Elon Musk, you'd be like, oh, that's a funny name. Who the heck is that?
Like a co-founder of PayPal.
Yeah, there's all these videos of him going out and he has to like spell his name for the people that are interviewing him. That's like, Elon, can you spell that for me? And nowadays, you can recognize the guy out of a lineup of anybody. Anyway, he sold his position in, I think it was PayPal, right? It was like he got like $200 million, which is a crazy amount of money. So he was already very successful. He had multiple startups, and he went into PayPal with Peter Thiel, and they made their fortunes together out of that deal. And both of them went on to go reinvest in other projects, some jointly, most of it independent. But Elon he took all of his money, every last penny, and he put into Solar City, Tesla, and SpaceX. So SpaceX goes back to 2002. And it didn't do anything for years. The darling of Elon's darling was for a lot of years was Tesla, and still is to this day. There's talks about merging the companies together, which I don't quite understand the synergies there, but maybe you can opine on that. But anyway, what I found compelling is not compelling, but wild, is that here's a guy who just got $200 million, puts every penny into it. He actually had to borrow money. He had to take out a loan just to pay his rent.
Effectively made himself broke.
Yes. And here's something else that's crazy. So his number one employee that he hired from SpaceX is this guy named Tom Mueller. All right, so Tom Mueller, who is this brilliant engineer, he's the one who kind of developed these Raptor engines that drive this spaceship northward. They're hyper efficient, and a lot of it has to do with this guy's brain power. But he was too nervous to take on this risk. So he went from a reliable job with a paycheck and everything to working in SpaceX as literally the first employee. It's like he and Elon in a garage. And he demanded as part of his compensation package that he have 2 years of his salary put in escrow, which is an undisclosed amount. Nobody knows. People estimate it's $200,000 to $400,000. So, but he still got shares. He still got shares in the company.
He got less shares than he would have had he not demanded the security of the salary.
He could have demanded his compensation be paid in the form of shares, which Elon would have preferred.
Right.
And had he done that, let's assume it's like a $400,000 investment. Had he done that, that'd have been worth over $1 billion today.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
So, I'm sure he's not kicking himself because he still has a 0.06% ownership stake in Tesla, which at today's price is over $1.1 billion.
Yes, he's still doing all right.
He's doing quite well.
But he gave up. He gave up potentially like what is $1 billion? 9 figures? 10 figures?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a lot of money. So speaking of a lot of money, let's talk about Elon. So Elon went from, I think his net worth was something approaching $600 billion. Because of this IPO, he catapults to $1.1 trillion.
World's first trillionaire.
World's first $1 trillion. Just to give you some context here. Oh, gosh.
So
here's the top 10 global billionaires according to real-time tracking. Elon Musk at the top, $1.1 trillion, which is just unbelievable. But so people can wrap their minds around this. Give us that corollary to time.
Yeah, I don't think we're the only people. I think a lot of people are out on social media doing this right now, comparing.
It's worth restating
comparing how how much is a million versus a billion versus a trillion?
Yes.
In terms of seconds. So we just did some of the math for fun, and it turns out that a million seconds, okay, there are 86,400 seconds in a day. Okay. So a million seconds is 11 and a half days, 11.57 days. Okay. So like, let's just call it 2 weeks for easy math. A billion seconds, not 2 weeks, now 32 years, 31.69 years, right? So almost, I mean, I'm 35, almost my entire lifetime. A trillion seconds, again, 86,400 seconds in a day, 31,688 years. So I just putting this into money terms, since we're money people, if you spend $1 a second, you'd spend $86,000 a day, something like, $2 million a month or something like that. If you spent $86,000 a day, you could spend that kind of money for 31,000 years.
Yeah.
So the point is, like, these are unfathomable numbers. I was watching a reel on social media, an astrologist that I follow, and he was talking about, like, these are the kinds of numbers like physicists use. You remember going into physics class, you were in college, you had to all use these e to the powers.
Yes, that's
on
right.
these numbers because the numbers didn't fit on the calculator. Like, that's where we're getting to. I tried to do this math, by the way, on my financial calculator. I couldn't plug the numbers in.
Yeah.
They were too big.
Yeah.
Too long for the screen.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And he's more, almost 3x the next up. It wasn't too long ago. Larry Page, very briefly, I believe, became the richest man in the world. He surpassed Elon for like a week or something.
Yeah.
It was when Oracle, Larry Page is the founder and CEO of Oracle, had that massive run up. Remember when there was like this circular deal making with OpenAI, and anyway, so
still circular deal making.
But now, I mean, it's just like, Elon's eclipsed him, and Sergey Brin. By the way, where's Mark? Where's Mark on this list?
Zuckerberg?
Yeah.
Facebook's kind of...
Yeah, it's fallen off.
He did... I mean, Facebook's an interesting case study in, like, watching... They like to spend money. It's kind of like what we said about examples of, like, people investing. They look at what's going on today and just assume that's where the future goes.
Fad chaser.
I think they're... Like, they changed their name to Meta when the metaverse came out, and that might have been, like, peak Facebook.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. But they're still the king of the social media. Everybody I know uses Instagram. That's like the most popular social media platform.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to glaze Elon too much. Like, I think it's a fascinating story. It's unfortunate that people get caught up in politics, and I'm not just talking about like, Elon endorsing Trump and all that stuff. It's like people get caught up in this billionaire number. They don't understand the amount of work that goes into that. And they also don't understand the good that has that. They only look at it through a envious lens. Yeah. And I get that. I get why people are like, who needs $1 billion? Really nobody. Nobody needs $1 billion. But that's not the basis for making decisions on who gets what. Is based on need. If we all got what we needed, then we would just get a house. None of us would have air conditioning, because we don't need air conditioning. We would all get food, so that's just not the basis for, how economics works. And it also discounts the positives that go into someone with this kind of work ethic, who, Elon's founded multiple companies that employ thousands of people. As a result of this SpaceX IPO, he's created more millionaires than I think anybody else in history.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. And how can you not cheer that? I find the only way I can think of for people that don't cheer that is like, you're just envious. And I would check the way you're thinking about it.
But just think about the story you just told about Elon. Elon was part of this company. They ended up having a liquidity event. He got a bunch of money. Turns out he used that pile of money not to ride off into the sunset and just spend it frivolously for the fun of it.
And he could have.
He went and started 3 other companies, of which 2 became massively influential on the trajectory of humankind. So, like, I wonder 20 years from now, we have a bunch of newly minted millionaires because of this IPO. And I wonder which one of them, or which ones of them, over the next 20 and 30 years are going to go on to do some pretty great things.
Yes.
That money.
It's going to generate, or it could, I shouldn't say it will, but it could generate the next generation of founders.
Yeah.
So and I will say, I'm gonna make this comment. I move on. Every one of these people on this list, Elon, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, everyone worked their butt off. Every single one of them. Yeah, they're right place at right time. Luck is definitely involved in this. So I don't want to discount how luck plays a role. Luck plays a role in every single success story. Also, other people play a role in every single success story. So none of these people would be here without the army of talent behind them. But they also had the talent, the wherewithal to organize these efforts and then bring them into reality. I don't think anyone could argue Tesla wouldn't be what it is today without Elon. SpaceX would not be here without Elon. The Boring Company would not be here without Elon. Like the guy brings these things into the world better than anyone else. So that said, I'm not going to glaze Elon anymore, but I find his case study to be absolutely fascinating. And it's also like, can we just admit that it's really exciting to have the space age back? I was actually kind of jealous of my parents because they got to see, the moon landings and all this stuff and the Apollo programs, and that stuff kind of all died off. Remember when we growing up, we had the shuttle program and how cool that was to see the shuttle kind of coming in, and that just died. It died in the 2000s, and it was just like, and I remember thinking like, yeah, that sucks. Like it felt like we were going back into the dark ages, and now it's like it's coming back. So I'm excited about that. Before I don't know if you had anything to add, but I wanted to move on to like how IPOs work. Because I think that people really don't know what an IPO is.
Yeah, I guess the big thing for me, just as a we don't provide like recommendations on stocks or things like that on here, but you just have to be mindful that there's a lot more to the mechanics that move a stock than like whether or not it is a good company short term or long term. And so one thing I'll point out about IPOs, maybe this is a good transition. There's a stat that's been kind of making its way around online about over the last 15 years, the various IPOs and their performance, how they actually did. And hold on here, I'm going to find it. It turns out that over the past 15 years, if you looked at the median, there were, I don't know how many IPOs this is, maybe 20 something. But anyway, if you look at all of the IPOs over the last 15 years, their 1-year return and their max drawdown, the median IPO lost 31% in its first year. And suffered a 53% drawdown along the way.
Yes.
So the facts are, if history is a good guide, you don't necessarily, like, just because you get in on a company at the IPO doesn't mean that, like, it's just going to go up and away.
Even at the IPO price, there was a lot of sorcery behind, the valuation. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
And there are people here. Yeah. Like, remember, 96% of this company is owned by people that have owned this stock for a while.
Yes.
And if you were a client of mine and you were a SpaceX employee and you've been invested in this thing for 10 or 15 years, now the company's public and you've got access to $1 million, $2 million, as your financial advisor, I'm talking to you about leveraging, like monetizing some of that. Not because it's not a good stock or whatever. It's because this is life-changing money. And you take chips off the table when it's responsible to do so. When you make 100 or 200x on a position, you want to probably take.
You can't start another business with SpaceX stocks. You have to sell it.
You can't start a business. You can't buy a house. You can't go on a vacation.
Exactly.
Whatever it is, right?
Yeah. So and that's exactly what's going to happen. Is you're going to see the insiders. They do have lockup periods. One thing I also do want to touch on. Is that there is this notion that indexes are gobbling up all the like SpaceX somehow secured like the inside track with like the S&P and the Dow indices. That is actually not true. Standard & Poor's and the Dow indices did not offer any exceptions to SpaceX whatsoever. They're not included in the index. So if you own an S&P 500 fund, you're going to have to wait till next year, and that's only if SpaceX meets its seasoning requirements.
Right.
So it has to meet a profitability requirement, and it has to be around for a year or more. So The demand that's driving this is mostly all just institutional retail buying frenzy.
Yeah.
It's
So to be clear, your S&P 500 fund is not going to add SpaceX as a position for at least the next 12 months.
Correct. Yeah, and people think that that's not the case, and I've encountered that misinformation out there. I'm not sure how that got out there, but there are some indexes that did fast track SpaceX, like NASDAQ 100, but even the NASDAQ is not adding it immediately. So there's a seasoning period, and anyway, that's what's driving a lot of this right now is just retail frenzy and hype. It's not reality, and I would not be surprised. Again, this is not an analysis. I'm not suggesting that you sell it. I'm not suggesting you buy it. I'm just saying it would not surprise me if SpaceX followed those averages that you just stated. So for it to have a 50% drawdown would not be unusual.
Well, you just have a lot of things that are driving the stock right now that are not fundamentals.
Yes.
I mean, that's the fact of it. You've got flows.
And these things are very difficult to predict. With precision. For all we know, it's all hype and sunshine as far as the eye can see. I doubt it because we've never seen that before. Gravity always comes into play. I mean, that's the whole notion of SpaceX is defeating gravity. So maybe it's the exception, but I don't think that's the case.
But I think one thing that I've been clarifying for a lot of people is like, people feel like they're getting in on the IPO, or if they are getting in the IPO, they're in at the ground level.
Yeah.
And they could make 100, 200, 3. They think about people that bought Apple at the IPO 30 years ago, and how much money they made. But to buy a company for $2 trillion.
Yeah, Apple did not IPO at the top of at the top of the market like SpaceX did. I'm curious, what did Apple IPO at? And what was the largest position?
Apple's market cap at its IPO was like, I'm rounding, $2 billion.
And what was the top market cap?
I mean, Apple's market cap like today is like $4 trillion
No.
plus.
I meant like for what was the number one constituent? Like I would guess General Electric.
Oh, I don't know. Apple IPO'd in 1980. They raised $100 million. Okay, so $100 million compared to the 87 or 86 billion that we talked about. And when they IPO'd, the company was worth $1.778 billion. So if you took a company that was worth let's just call it $2 billion, and you turn it into $4 trillion, again, not accounting for any kind of dilution, that's a lot of return on your money.
Yes.
Right? But to take a company that IPOs at $2 trillion and make 100x, that company has to go to $200 trillion. The entire U.S. stock market is worth something like $50 trillion.
Yeah, and to give some people context, let me talk about how IPOs are constructed. All right, and the best way I can describe this is like take your own job, your job and your income. As an example, we're going to incorporate that. So let's say you are an electrician, and you go and you wire homes for a living, and you make $100,000 a year doing this, and you decide to incorporate. We're going to call it Electrician Company Incorporated, and and so you have a private company. You own that. You own 100% of that company. Let's say you want to expand. You want to buy trucks. You want to buy additional people. So you decide to IPO. Now, granted, to IPO, you need to have a much higher scale business. Goldman Sachs is not going to look at you seriously if you only got 100,000.
You typically IPO for raising bucket loads of money.
But for the sake of this example, I want to simplify it so people can understand. So let's say you're making $100,000 a year and you need money to expand. So you can either do that through debt, so you could sell off bonds to finance this, or you can say, you know what, I'm going to sell my company. I'm going to sell shares of Electricians Incorporated and use that money to then finance these growth initiatives. So that's what you decide to do in an IPO. You would contact an investment banker like Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. That's who brokered this deal with SpaceX. And you would say, hey, find other interested buyers in my company. And they would, of course, go through an underwriting process, find out what you do for a living, what are your financials. You got all this compliance stuff that you got to do with the SEC. But ultimately, they would go and they would structure this. They would estimate what kind of price you could get, and they would go try and sell it to the public. That is what's known as the initial public offering. And let's say your $100,000 would sell at a multiple. All right, that's what we call in our industry a valuation. and let's say that multiple is 10. Well, in that case, your IPO could theoretically get you $1 million in capital.
For the whole company.
For the whole company. So you would sell your entire company. You no longer own it. You're just an employee at this point. But you got $1 million. And then you go and fund these operations. Now, that's if you sell all of your shares. Most founders like Elon did not do that. He didn't dilute his
He still retains like 40% of the company.
Yeah, and 85% of the voting rights. He's got series called super voting, but you don't need to get into that. It's like complicated. But so that's how an IPO works. And that's exactly what SpaceX did. They did what's known as a primary offering. So all of the money, all $86 billion, went directly to SpaceX. So SpaceX now has 87 billion.
Nobody sold shares to get the money. They were newly created shares. They diluted people, right? They, like existing shareholders now own less of the company based on that prorated extra cash that was raised, right?
Yeah.
And now they've got $86 billion to go grow the business with.
Exactly. And that's the plan. And who knows what they're going to do. I mean, it's going to be very exciting to watch. I've heard rumors that, they're going to put data centers in outer space.
According to Ron Barron, by 2027.
Data centers in outer space?
Yeah, I mean, he kind of made the comment about that. They pushed him on it a little bit. And he said, well, Elon always says that I may not do things on time, but I get things done.
Yeah.
Well, so who knows? 2027 is probably optimistic. But what is going to happen? I mean, we don't have to get into this today, but data centers on Earth are so valuable right now. Like these are like the next big thing. So what happens if it's irrelevant to put a data center on Earth and you just put them all in space?
If you think about it, if you can make it work logistically, it's the most reasonable place. You've got unlimited power. You can position it, solar panels, direct sunlight.
What do you do about like radiation and all this other kind of stuff?
The biggest problem with this is what do you do for heat dissipation? Because there's no atmosphere in space, there's no way to get rid of the heat.
But isn't it cold?
Yeah, but how do you transfer the heat to the cold? You need a medium to transfer that. It doesn't work. So
sounds like you know more about it than me.
Yeah, outer space is pretty weird, dude. There's a lot of stuff that happens in outer space that we take for granted here. One of those is like sweating and perspiration. Like it's all fluid dynamics that kind of addresses that heat problem. But in outer space, there's really no way to transfer heat to the vacuum. You can't do it. So you need something, some matter to transfer it to.
Well,
but anyway,
I want to start to wrap this up with a couple of thoughts for employees. So let's say you work at a company that is private and you've got some kind of equity compensation and maybe the company IPO is not. What should you be thinking about?
So what I would be thinking about is I don't want to be concentrated. My ability to earn income and all of my net worth should not be tied to the same company, regardless of how good it is, unless you're maybe like one of these founding members. So Elon obviously does. He has no problems with that. But you could argue, well, even he's diversified now because he has all these different operations. But if I'm an employee and I just, and I don't really have direct control over where this organization goes, and I'm not a multi-billionaire, I'm going to play the safer route and I'm going to diversify.
What if you can't? You got a private company. A lot of times there's not a way to sell these.
Then you pour your soul into that company and make sure that it works out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I would kind of tend to agree. I mean, it's a sliding scale because kind of back to your founder analogy with the guy that was a second in hire at SpaceX. It's like the more safety you get, the less upside you have. And of course, you don't get like mega rich without some concentration.
Yeah.
I mean, diversification is great, everything we preach. And everything we preach is designed to get you consistently wealthy, okay? But like for you to become a billionaire, diversification's not exactly the right way to get there.
It'll harm you. So diversification will not improve returns. In fact, that's in the disclosures. Diversification oftentimes...
Well, it doesn't... It's hard to say it won't improve returns, right? But it's gonna manage returns. Like if you own any one individual company, like it could be SpaceX and you could make a 500x on your money. It could be, a company that goes to zero. And it's just, it's more of a gamble, right? Like, so I think about wealth building on like this spectrum. There's building wealth which has a high probability of success and requires, kind of I'll say simple but not easy rule book of saving, staying diversified, investing regularly. And then there's getting rich, which is a little different. It has, let's say, a wider array of outcomes. You have people that have tried to get rich that ended up dead broke, and you have people that try to get rich that ended up multi-billionaires. But that requires concentration and luck. And so going back to the practical application here, I think if you're working at one of these companies, one of the things you really have to get clear on is what are your needs, okay? Because a financial plan can really help you identify like how much of this money is material to your financial plan, your base plan. Like I build financial plans in a way where we have kind of a base plan, but then we have upsides, right? There are like the baseline plan that we run should be pretty conservative in the sense that it assumes, some normal, like some 7% rate of return or whatever it is. And it assumes you stay diversified and blah, blah, blah. But especially when you're dealing with young people, you can be really thoughtful as far as where you put in, potential upside. And company stock can be, it can be one of those. I have clients that own shares in their private company stock that are worth, this is a great story, actually. This is a real story. I had a client one time came to me and worked at a company, had some extra money. And when I say extra money, we looked at the plan and we determined that it wasn't like necessary money. It wasn't mission critical money to the financial plan. And he worked at a business that had shareholders, and every year there was the ability to buy into these shares. And every year the shares would make a distribution, and I got all the details on it, and this stock was like pretty good.
Yeah.
Like you could buy, the client could buy $50,000 of the company stock, and it would pay like a distribution every year, and it was like it had strong performance. So I said, hey, this is the one time, like a lot of times as financial advisors, we say buy less of your company stock, be more diversified. Actually, in this case, I said, well, you don't have to have this money. And like your company stock's really doing well. Again, some level of luck required in this. We bought the company stock, and then within a couple of years, company stock got bought by a big private equity company.
Yeah.
Right? That stock 10x'd in that process. So the guy went from, basically buying $50,000 worth of the stock to having a $500,000 private stock investment. And now we've got this, this private stock investment that's worth some pretty material money. And we are talking about like eventually the company is going to go public. And so back to the core point of why I'm talking about this on here, there are things that you want to do to prepare for that. First and foremost, it's understand your exposure relative to your needs, right? I don't want to call it gambling with money, but don't be speculating with money that you probably rely on. So first, identify what money you don't rely on. Secondly, understand what the forms of equity compensation you have are. So like whether you have an employee stock purchase plan where you're buying stock through your paycheck, whether you get restricted stock units where the company doles shares out to you, or whether you have some form of options where you have the right to buy shares at a certain price but not the obligation to. Like all of those structures come with different tax consequences, different strategies as far as how you would approach things at the exit and what have you. The other thing you really want to pay attention to, especially as your company's getting ready to IPO, is whatever lockup periods that you're going to expose to, whatever trading windows might exist with that new company stock. And really, if you're getting close to the IPO, you really want to take some time to like map out. Like if I had somebody right now that's in SpaceX and they're getting ready to make, $1 million because they were an employee, or $5 million because they were an employee and they had $200,000 of equity compensation, that's life-changing money. We are definitely going down and looking at a plan, and we're not trying to make a bet against the stock, but at a certain point, like your money is only as valuable as the life and the impact that it allows you to live and make on others.
Can you imagine? The SpaceX headquarters is in Texas, right? Can you imagine the local real estate market, how it's impacted just from this alone?
It's got to be nuts right now.
Yeah.
And Texas
I just thought about realtors are about to start eating good around
that's
the
why
SpaceX.
These IPOs are good for the economy, right? These are not bad. Like just because lots of people have lots of money now isn't a bad thing. These are people to go buy houses, start businesses, do all sorts of stuff. So I don't look at this as a bad thing.
Well, I think that's a great way to cap off the topic. So I don't have anything to add to that. I think that was very thorough, and that was great. I wish I had something to say because I would sound smart if I did.
Well,
but I want to move on to the tip of the day if you're good with that.
Do you have one?
I have one. Yeah, I kind of. It's completely unrelated to this, but one thing I was pursuing, and in my effort to look for better tips of the day, I subscribe to Consumer Reports, because I want to bring more value to the listeners. But in doing so, it opened my eyes how much Consumer Reports has advanced since the last time I subscribed. First of all, it's only $64 for the print version plus the online version. The online version
For a
alone
year?
was, for a year. So I thought that was pretty decent. But then what's really cool that they've added is they've added this best time to buy calendar where you can
cool.
go and look. Yeah, you can look like what's kind of generally on sale right now, like June. So if you got high blood pressure, hey, great. June is the time to buy blood pressure monitors. Apparently blenders have a good deal. Cordless drills, probably related to Father's Day sales.
Well, let's go to is this July? Let's go to July, because by the time this comes out, it'll be close to July.
Yeah, that's true. So July, blood pressure
Still
monitors
blood pressure
again.
monitors,
Yeah.
blood glucose. What's with
Blood
household
glucose.
appliances and medical devices?
Clothes, but I thought that was really cool, and you can actually click on these and shop and compare directly from here. So you got the Consumer Reports. I will say, don't just lock, stock, and barrel believe the Consumer Reports stuff, because they're either they say that they're they say that they're not. But I have purchased like the Consumer Reports top pick of some things, and it was like not great. So it is still a subjective thing. It's not pay to play. At least that's what they say. But it is ultimately some person's opinion. So that's not a slam dunk guarantee, but it will, I think, better edify your choices. So if you're like looking for, let's say, home security cameras, apparently July is a good time to do that. So you can find some sales here. So anyway, that's my tip of the day. So for the discerning consumer, check out Consumer Reports. I think you can go, I'm not going to worry. You can go to it. Everybody can go do it on their own. I think it's like around $30 or $40 just for the digital only copy. So, and there's an app you can download and all that jazz. So anyway, that's the tip of the week. Really appreciate all the listeners for staying. If we kept your attention this long, thank you. Definitely share our podcast to anyone. I mean, we're trying to grow our listenership, and subscribe if you haven't, so you can get notified the next time we come out with an episode.
Yeah, we really appreciate the subscriptions, and thanks so much for listening.
Catch you next time.
Opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Advisory services offered through National Wealth Management Group, LLC.